Good evening, everyone. My name is Fang Qin, and I'm the Community Building Executive at GGEF. Welcome to our SDG Open Hack Singapore Bootcamp. Whether you're a mentor, a participant, or an observer for SDG Open Hack Singapore, we're excited to have you here with us today, and we hope that this will be an enriching experience for you. To get the ball rolling, I would first like to provide a brief introduction of the event today. SDG Open Hack Singapore is an atypical hackathon organized by GGEF, which stands for Global Green Economic Forum. GGEF is a social enterprise that aims to promote innovation, sustainability, and leadership. This hackathon encourages university students across various disciplines to come up with innovative solutions for societal and environmental issues linked to the UN SDGs. We thank our program partners, university partners, corporate partners, supporting organizations, and network partners for allowing us to bring such a meaningful event that will contribute to global sustainability discourse. Today, we have a great panel of 4 speakers who are eager to share with us their expertise and wisdom. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear and learn from them. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the first segment of the bootcamp. When it comes to marketing your innovative solutions, branding and designing are crucial to showcase the effectiveness of your solution. I'm very pleased to introduce Stephen Barry, the managing partner of Stepworks, a leading Hong Kong-based branding agency. Hello, Stephen. The floor is yours.
Hi, great. Thank you so much to the GGEF team for inviting me and for you, the listener, who is joining us for this bootcamp session. So we'll be talking through concepts that my team and I at branding agency Stepworks use in our day-to-day brand development work so that we can help you articulate and present your ideas with impact. So first of all, before I dive into the content, very well done on being part of the SDG Open Hack. I admire how you'll be working to develop meaningful ideas and solutions that will create positive change. And from what I understand, it's a pretty intensive session that you'll be going through. You only have 24 hours to develop and present your ideas. And as if coming up with game-changing ideas to leave positive impact in the world isn't enough, you have to actually make sure that you present this to an audience in a compelling way that they can understand and feel moved enough to act on. And failing to present your idea compellingly could mean that your idea gets overlooked or forgotten. And that's definitely not what we want, right? So in our 15 to 20 minutes together, I'll be sharing ideas and a framework and some tips with you so that you can influence perceptions, convey what makes your concept distinct, and promote your idea with greater confidence. Okay, so I'll be going through this in 3 parts, starting off with the basics, what is brand and branding, providing you with a blueprint for your messaging framework, and then give you some design and presentation tips. And, of course, please feel free to drop in your questions if you've got any, and the GGEF team will feed that to me. So first of all, a little bit of an introduction. I'm the managing partner of a branding firm based in Hong Kong called Stepworks. Our purpose is to create positive change, and we do that through our work. And this is also what you'll be looking to do, create positive change through your ideas. And at Stepworks, we do this through a wholehearted brand building methodology that we've been fine-tuning for over 20 years, and I'll be sharing some of those tips that you can use. So some snapshots of our work. We put a smile on Hong Kong's probably oldest green form of transport, so zero emissions, Hong Kong's double-decker electric trams. We work with the likes of the judiciary. We help brand them. And we've also been working with Swire for now into our 5th year to develop their sustainability reports. And we also work with Silicon Valley venture capital firms such as Alabaster and the stock exchange in Hong Kong. So we've had a chance to help these leading organizations convey what makes them distinct and amplify that through design. So it would be good to start off with understanding what is brand and what is branding. Very often you'll hear people say, oh, that's a great brand. And often what they mean is that that's an organization or an offering with a great reputation. And in some way, these two words are interchangeable. And what we want you to be able to do is to build that reputation around the idea and that the team that you'll be entering this open hack with. And a brand exists as a set of perceptions in people's mind. So it all happens in people's, between their ears, what they think of a certain offering. Does it have value or not? The positive and negative connotations of it. And the discipline of branding is about how we can influence those perceptions. So, for example, how you can present your solution in a way that influences how the judging panel and other stakeholders think of you. And in branding, you do this through words, images, and designs, and other experiences. And what is very useful in your context is that brand itself can act as a North Star to attract, guide, and direct a shared vision for development. So it helps paint a picture that everyone can buy into, a vision of what we're working towards, what the benefits are if we can actually achieve those solutions and get everyone excited and moving in the same direction. And if you get your brand message conveyed and presented well, you will have a whole range of competitive advantages, such as you can inspire trust in the team sooner. You can clearly express value in the idea that you're bringing forward. It can help you be noticed and be remembered. And it can attract investors if the idea does go forward and you need funding, and of course, supporters and advocates. And it can also help you establish your position. And by position, we mean like how are you positioned in the minds of your audience and contribute to growth. So having people adopt your ideas and having more people join your movement or initiative. So let me go on to sharing a framework with you that can act as a blueprint for your brand. So I do appreciate that you're not actually developing a brand at the moment, but you can say your offering. Okay, so it's a blueprint for your offering. How do you articulate this? So we use something called a brand model, and it's a strategic document that explains the purpose of your brand, what does it promise, why that promise can be believed, and then the information within the brand models distilled into a single idea called a brand DNA, and that's the overall idea that you want to convey at every possible brand touch point to help get you remembered and get you noticed. And why is a brand model important? So if you're building a house, you'll need a set of blueprints. If you're building out a solution, an idea that you want people to buy into, you also need a blueprint. And this is the framework that can help you do it. And the outcome is that it'll align your team's thinking, what the intentions are, what do your audience need, the reality in the world, and what makes you distinct. So you're always looking to align these different components, right? About what your solution can genuinely offer, what the different stakeholders want and need, and a factor or factors that really make you stand out and get you remembered, factors that make you distinct. And here's an overview of the brand model, and it comprises of these different dimensions of the brand. So what's its function, the overall purpose, positioning, promise, reasons to believe in that promise, the personality, other attributes, and then finally the DNA. So let me go through these one by one. And if you happen to have some paper and a pen handy, you might want to grab hold of that and kind of write down what these might be within your brand model. So first of all, starting off with the function of your brand. What is it that your team actually does? Okay, so I'll come up with some examples of what that could be. And of course, this is going to be pretty unique to you. So a function might be something like, we are a community tools for DIY sharing and business that helps reduce landfill waste. Or it might be that you're an online platform that encourages inter-school sustainability participation via gamification. Or it might be that you offer a training program and products for indoor vegetable farming. So these are just some that I made up, but so just kind of describe what is it that you do. So when you come to putting together your 2-minute video, your presentation, you can then very clearly articulate what is it at the most basic level that you function as. Then we look at the purpose of your brand. What's the societal purpose that drives your passion? So this will be linked to the SDGs, and some examples could be you want to reduce as much carbon from being emitted into the atmosphere as possible. That might be your purpose, to keep within the 1.3 degree limit, for example. You might want to work towards a world of greater gender equality in the workplace. So what is that overall purpose that is ideally unique to you, that other people will find valuable, that they would also be interested in as well? And then look at the positioning. So when we say positioning, it's how do you want to be positioned in the minds of your audience? So we break that into 3 sections. So you have a point of reference. So for example, the point of reference might be other NGOs or other school groups, or the space that you operate in. The point of parity. So the point of parity means that what are other people within that are coming up with similar solutions saying and doing that you also need to do? So I would imagine that innovation would be one of them, perhaps empowerment. So these are things that other people in a similar space are saying and doing, and you need to do them too, but they might not help you stand apart from the rest. So, but you also need to talk about them and also live them as well. So then you can say, okay, these are the points of parity. And then finally, in terms of the point of the positioning, is the point of distinction. What is it that sets you apart? What potentially could you become famous for, or should you become famous for? And this is your point of distinction. Then we move on to the brand promise. So in any enterprise, in any endeavor, if you want to get people along to come along with you, you need to make a promise, right? If you join me on my cause, on this quest, this is what you'll get. And that promise needs to be something that is valuable. So it needs to signal value to whoever it is that you're communicating it to, your various stakeholders. So what could your promise be? So using the example of a DIY tools sharing platform, your promise might be to get the tools you need without costing the earth. So, and if it was a gamification platform that you would have different schools trying to further their own sustainability efforts, it could be sustainable school champions or something like that. That could be the promise. So what is your unique promise that signals value to your audiences? And of course, just like in life, it's easier to make promises than it is to keep promises, right? So what are the reasons to believe? How is it that we can believe in the promise that you're making? So here you can put in 3 compelling reasons of why your promise can be believed. How will you fulfill that? And that might be, for example, 10 schools have already expressed interest to sign up to this program. Or you can say your advisory board includes Miss Grace Fu, your Minister for Sustainability and the Environment. And or this program is aligned with 10 of the 17 SDGs. So what are the reasons why people should believe in you? And this will give you more credibility in your presentation. And then importantly, you would then look at your personality. What if you imagine the tone and manner that your team should be communicating in. I would imagine that you'd have different personalities on the group, and different personalities within your group, but the brand, your overall presentation should be communicated just with one personality, right? So what is that personality? What is that tone and manner? Maybe it's friendly, maybe it's serious, perhaps it's encouraging. So have a think about personifying your offering. And then you might have some other attributes. So these could be the point of parity that we talked about. So what other people are saying too, and as well as your point of distinction. So you might want to talk about innovation, or if it's appropriate, if you're doing some kind of ecotourism thing. So an attribute might be ecotourism. And then as you pull together your presentation, then these are the words that you can make sure is within the content. And then finally, so that's your attributes. And then finally, you take all that and distill it all into your brand DNA, which can also be a positioning, act as a positioning phrase. So as a slogan, a positioning tagline, right? So here are some examples of what that looks like. So for Hong Kong's very green tramway system, that could be catch a ride, catch a smile. So this is what you want to convey and get people to remember. For this Hong Kong charity, family-oriented charities, it's family matters. So this will be your positioning phrase that you want to convey. And for a venture capital firm, you've got startup growth factor for Alabaster. So it's what is that success factor, and then you can communicate that in your various touch points. And you've got to make sure that your brand model is sustainable, true, extraordinary, and powerful. Okay, and that's your checklist to make sure that your brand model is on track. So some very quick design tips to show you how you apply that brand model. So taking this VC firm, Alabaster, some brand model highlights. So their function is that they're startup advisors and investors. Their brand DNA is that they are the startup growth factor. And then in their design, you can see that this is their logo. You can see that within the A, you've got a little droplet of that startup growth factor. So these kind of ideas can help, the brand model can help you with your overall design ideas. And you'll see that the personality, if we quickly jump back to the brand model, so understanding, unconventional, understated, and the website itself, the way it's presented, is also somewhat unconventional, but also understated. And very quickly finishing off with some design basics checklist. So as you're doing your presentation, make sure that you're guided by your brand model. Pick one main color, don't be too greedy. So one dominant color that people can recognize you by. Feel free to have a secondary color if you need to do charts and graphs. And pick just one typeface, one font with different options. So you see the word here on the screen, options. So go with something that gives you different weights of the characters, so you can draw emphasis to the content as needs be and give it some correct information hierarchy. And remember that consistency communicates quality. So make sure you have a consistent style throughout your presentation, but you also need to surprise and delight. So break that pattern of what you're doing. Maybe it might be a burst of color. Maybe there's music that changes in tempo, and that whenever there's a break, you will then re-engage people's attention. And always seek to simplify. Complexity creeps in really easily. Simplicity is hard. And as you're putting together the structure for your presentation, I always find this really helpful. So this is the overall arc in terms of the emotion, the journey you would want to take your viewers, your audience on. So start off with saying, today, this is what the problem is in the world, the ambition of what it could be. And then you talk about kind of jeopardy, danger. Okay, if we don't fulfill this ambition, what that danger, how terrible the outcome would be. But then you can then change the emotional feeling again, and then give hope. So, but there is hope. There's a way for us to address this. And then you provide them with, this is how we will do it with your groundbreaking, innovative idea. So think about what is the one thing you want your audience to remember? Because knowing that the judging panel, the people that you're presenting to, they're going to be bombarded with a lot of information, kind of trying to drink from a fire hose, right? They'll be taking in so much information. So what's the one thing you want them to remember? That might be your promise. What is it that you're promising them? Or potentially it could be your DNA, one or the other. You can see which one might be more appropriate in your particular context. And remember, it's all about alignment, aligning what you can genuinely offer, what your stakeholders want, and what makes you distinct. And I believe I've overrun a little bit in terms of timing, but I hope that is very useful. I wish you all the very best of luck. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and thank you once again for having me, and thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that really brilliant insight into the creative processes of branding and designing. I personally found the brand blueprint framework very interesting, and I see how our participants can leverage on that to brand their solutions in a very clear step-by-step process. So
Great.
As of now, I don't see any questions coming in just yet. Maybe they're still digesting the information that you just shared. But personally, I have a question.
Sure.
You give a lot of amazing branding tips today. Thank you for that. But I'm curious about a specific challenge, which is in the sea of brands greenwashing themselves today, how can actual and impactful solutions really distinguish themselves?
I think it's really in the actions. You've really got to live it. People, you can fool people. You can get people. It's like a restaurant. You can get people through the door, have one meal, but if it doesn't live up to its promise, then you won't get that customer back ever again. So it's the same with any organization, any initiative, right? So within the brand model framework, we talk about the promise. What is that promise that you're making? What is your intention? And you've got to deliver on that, basically. And a reputation can take decades to build. In this case, it's more like 24 hours for our participants here. 24 hours to build their reputation. But when you come to applying this, the reputation can be destroyed very, very quickly. So it's really living up to the truth. And within the brand model framework, we talk about purpose. And the purpose, if the purpose for a commercial enterprise is purely to deliver shareholder value, money, returns, and not about stakeholder value, then don't talk about that, because that would only ever get an organization in trouble, and it's dishonest, and it's not good for internal culture building either. So I hope that helps. It's all about being true and delivering on promises.
Right, definitely. I think with that, I know our participants today, they would definitely not fall short on the whole action part, the whole action aspect. So really exciting to see what they come up with during the hack itself. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much for your time. If anybody has questions, please leave it in the comments, and we'll now proceed to the next segment. So for the next segment, we will gain insight into the immense power of transformative technologies and how it can be harnessed to solve pertinent issues. To speak on this, I'll be inviting Lorraine Longato. Lorraine is the Regional Innovations Experience Leader at the SAP APJ Innovation Office, and she leads the Sustainability and Purpose business pillars for SAP. Lorraine, please.
Thank you for that. I don't know if I need to present any more than that. I was just wondering if everyone could see my screen, my presentation. Just a yes or no would do. Okay. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so I wanted to say thank you to Stephen, because I actually found that startup conversation of branding very, very enthralling. It's so true. I experience that so often with customers and clients when we're trying to express an idea, concept. And so from that point of view, fantastic session, Stephen. So briefly, I just wanted to introduce myself, if I may. My name is Lorraine Longato, as you would have been told. I wanted to express why the SDGs mean so much to me and why it's so important in our world when we think about it, especially when it comes to sustainability and purpose-based initiatives. Believe it or not, it's something that our customers are demanding every day when it comes to new ways of doing things. So as my bio would tell you on LinkedIn, when you look at that, you'll see that I've worked in a number of industries. I even worked on the Australian Federal Government's ETS emissions trading scheme as part of an industry rep. At the time, I was holding the utilities and sustainability portfolio for a dairy company. So it's something that's close to my heart because it does deliver outcomes. So, as you might guess, I do live here in Singapore, but my accent gives it away. I wasn't originally from here. Yes, I was born in Australia, but I spent the first few years of my life in Italy, and then I moved back to Australia, where I had the great fortune of living on one of these cattle farms, right? This is where you really see the impacts of environmental implications of droughts, fires, and so forth. And as a double irony would have it, and I think this is the funny part of it, one of my first leadership roles was in that dairy company, of which I have a story to share with you. But it not only led me to leading a cool project for that company, but I also had the great fortune of helping a friend of mine on her farm with a stick on the sand, having a beer by a fireplace, put together the understanding of the agricultural needs and my problems when I was on that cattle farm with this new technology that she was piloting called blockchain. And I was able to help her put together the business process that she eventually implemented at IBM and became the first meat track and trace application globally in Australia. And so why was that special to me, you might think? Our property backed onto an Indigenous land holding, and we ran our stocks through that. So when we paid royalties to the government, it was usually to a government community that then arbitrated what the Indigenous community got. So my agenda in helping her was to ensure the Indigenous community actually got what they were owed from us graziers and not a government arbitrated amount. The impact, social good, not just visibility of the supply chain. And guess what? That company just happens to be one of the world's biggest unicorns in the blockchain space. It's called Everledger. So it's partnering with SAP on many initiatives right now. So you can understand that everything has an impact and also comes around full circle. So I just want to share with you this picture. So remember how I told you I worked for a dairy company? Well, it was Parmalat. But I had the opportunity of bringing together commercial, ethical, environmental outcomes colliding into one impact for them many, many years ago. And to tell you the truth, is probably what galvanized my love for this area. So there I led plastics, energy, environment, and sustainability portfolios. And it was an interesting bunch of circumstances where this collided. I had one of the production people, and you will all know this is the bottling operation of a dairy firm. What happens here is, yes, they bottle and they use plastic, but all these bottles go into a crate, and a crate has to be sanitized. And guess what? If you don't get the milk out within 24 hours, then it has to be downgraded to tier 2 selling avenues. If you don't get it out in 48 hours, guess what? We dump it in a dumpster. So we have immense amount of waste, immense amount of cost, and immense amount of energy to sanitize these crates. This was the opportunity where I got to work with a young engineering student, and we just said, there's government grants. Why don't we just put a 20-foot reefer out there, dump the product in there, and actually use the anaerobic process to actually gain some value and get something out of it. So let me just share with you what the outcome of that was, and it was quite ironic. So if you think about it, we have a process of bottles that are waste, But then if we didn't get rid of them within the 24 hours required, they have milk in them. That's cartons and so forth. So it's smelly, it stinks. So what we were doing was emptying, compacting, crushing these bottles, and then putting them into a biodigester. So that was the start of our building blocks, where we actually used the anaerobic process to then create solid waste and the liquid waste, which would obviously have a lot of urea in it. And we ran the liquid waste over the rooftop that then used the sun to off-spark the any aromas and urea that was in it. And then we used that as non-potable water to actually wash the tanks and use that. But remember how I told you we had energy costs here? So we were using a generator. We were actually heating up the water at the start of the factory, running it down to the back. Just this project alone of anaerobic process and then creating the solid waste and then creating, what I mean by creating the solid waste is, this is part 2 of the block. We actually ended up giving the solid waste to the nursery across the road. So we didn't have to pay for the dumping of those solid wastes, and that was about 32 to 25k a month. Reefer cleaning, reefer hire, 32k a month. And then let's just add how much energy we saved. Anyone want to take a guess? I'll save you the time. 250k per quarter. So in effect, we were looking at a process whereby which not only were we saving $250,000, but another, all up 380k per year, $1 million plus about $1.5 million all up, just by being environmentally sound. We didn't need the water. We used the offshoot non-potable water to use around the plants, as well as the trucks and so forth. We then pressurized and heated up the water that we needed for the sanitation process right there and then, because the biodigester and the gas generator was right there. And of course, we didn't pay for any of the carting waste, because guess what? The nursery over the road came and got it. And this was just one plant, 1.5 million. We had 9 plants that we rolled this out. So I bet you could say that the operations guys were not calling them a tree-hugging hippie then. We basically had a way of creating an environmental impact that actually generated, and if you could look at it as from a Legos perspective, the building blocks where we were able to eliminate, circulate what we used, and regenerate in the form of energy on that site, yielding a lot of positive returns. So this is the way I want you to think of environmental opportunities. It's not just the building blocks for a project or one-off savings, but they have implications all over the place. So in brief, I'll hop to SAP. In brief, we're part of many organizations, over 9,000 companies that committed to the UN's Race to Zero. So the Race to Zero spawned its own slogan within our company, whereby which we're chasing zero. And by chasing zero, I mean we are focusing on 3 pillars. And those 3 pillars are zero waste, zero carbon emissions, and zero inequality. Now, for the purpose of this presentation, I just want to share stories. I have got all of those products broken up into those 3 areas at the end of this presentation to share with you. More than happy to give you more breakdowns. But just knowing that we are heavily focused on delivering on these and are providing the data every day on projects, as well as initiatives we're taking in-house to actually create an impact. So what we are in our innovation office, we're geared to creating impact, not just across our business, but even across our customers' business. So technically speaking, we have a lot of out-of-the-box solutions, and I won't illustrate what they are, but they are all connected to our Chasing Zero mandate. But why is it so important? Because there is an outcome for it, not just for society, but there is a business outcome, as well as there's an earth-wide benefit in doing so. Let me illustrate. When I talk to businesses today, use a straight-out Venn to illustrate the points. We're not just talking about business process efficiency, RPAs and automating things. That's simple stuff. That's stuff that anyone can do. That's the foundational building blocks. Where we like to talk to our customers, and something that Stephen talked about, is reinventing business processes, reinventing the way revenue streams come in through applications that really create impact. And of course, the green line. By that, we're meaning business process innovation is more than just reinventing a business process, but it's actually an opportunity to have an outcome that drives green initiatives. And when you think about the immense amount of data being generated now and the fact that we are moving from 3G to 5G, there's an opportunity to harvest all of this technology and harvest this new technology that uses less and consumes less. But more importantly, is pulling in insights where we can make decisions more rapidly and even drive consumer behavior towards that. So what that basically means is that we're not focusing on just process efficiency exercises and just one application. We're doing portfolios where we can actually look at top line growth and bottom line growth business impactors for that organization. In effect, if we're not driving impact and value in our customers' ecosystem, then we're not going to be there as an innovation office. To put it bluntly, it's the Lego block on top, right? It's creating that aha moment, that value proposition, that new business process that allows them to potentially eliminate waste, drive energy efficiencies that then also reduces their footprint as well as drives their business growth outcomes. So ultimately, who's happy there? It's the customer. So why is sustainability and data critical in our world today? Let me just tell you that data is growing immensely. I think this won't come as a surprise to you that in excess of 90% of the world's data existing right now has been generated just in the last 2 COVID years, right? And it's going faster. So it's becoming increasingly digitized, and we're basically needing more data scientists, more analysts, more professionals in technology and STEM to help us really make sense of this data, right? When I think about it, people say it's algorithms, but humans and machine learning algorithms work together. So this is where we can actually embed things which areas, embed AI that sometimes is subject to bias through having a diverse ecosystem. And that is where we focus on as well, empowering women as well across cultural diversity. So in a sense, we have an opportunity with data and with the outcomes of this data to actually help us address that zero inequality. And that's why we feel so strongly about the Chasing Zero mantra, because we're doing it internally in our own company. We recognize that it's critical. Diversity is mission critical. Just in Asia Pacific, as an example, we operate in 66 nationalities across 12 countries, and of which 35% of the workforce is women, 40% sit in our leadership team. So we understand that these kind of things are actually impactors into how people think and how they're going to use their data and who they have to target their products to. Just take a look at this weekend's election results in Australia, right? The nation voted for more women in government. So data, applications, making sure that you understand these algorithms and the culture and the people that you're tailoring your products to is important to ensuring that you have adoption, whether it be an application. And one cool one which I worked with last year was a boat, a startup team that actually had a boat and it collected data as well as rubbish. So there's some fantastic things that can be done. But something that's close to my heart is healthcare. And I'll just share with you personal stories, and one of which I'm proud of here in Singapore. Most of you know Zulik Pharmaceutical. They actually use the blockchain technology to not only roll out their HVACs, but they started with cancer treatment drugs. Why? Because 30% of the cancer drugs in all of our region are fake. Now, that might mean nothing to you, but me, as a cancer patient, that means a lot. Because that basically means that there's a 30% chance that I won't be getting the right stuff. And that's the difference between life and death. So what they did was implemented something for ethical reasons, but also to create brand recognition, a bit of what Stephen was talking about, to create trust with their community and consumers to use them. And another health project that I also had the great privilege of working on and used my mother as the guinea pig was a healthcare services piece in Australia, where we used devices on the recipient, my mother, as well as sensors and alerts, as well as a screen at the front door to allow access. Now, you might say, so what does that mean? Now, the biggest costs on government is healthcare and aged care provisions. And yet this is going to make you horrified that 18% of people die within the first year once they go into an aged care facility. Why? Because we've changed their life. we've restricted them into a community. So if your parents or your grandparents could live in the freedom of their own home, knowing that they're digitally connected to a device that will call them if they haven't moved, or alert family members if there hasn't been any responses to the notification, or instantly send out an ambulance that gets a QR code that allows them into the house to actually care for the recipient. What that does is reduce the cost burden on government for a one-off pay-as-you-go service. So data is really moving in interesting ways in healthcare. Smart cities, we're working with, I'll just give you one small example. We're working with a certain major construction mob in Europe that run major shopping centres. What they do is they embed intelligence and data into their stores, not just for foot traffic, but also to send promos to anyone who's near the vicinity. They know what time kids get out of school, so they send them promos to get their bubble drink at a discounted rate between 3:30 and 4:30. So they go into the shopping centre, and then they start, when they know they're in the shopping centre, start actively using that data to drive them into certain areas. And we even developed an AI that recognises when you're in a store and recognises that you've gone shopping for your wife, and oops, it's coming up to your wife's anniversary. You bought her a red Chanel shirt. Would you like to buy that again? Chanel store is there, go and get it, or have it delivered to you. So there's really, really cool ways that we're actually now driving through applications, traffic, and data to create predictive insights and drive algorithms towards our greater good. Now, this one I'm really proud of. This is actually a company in New Zealand called Foodstuffs, and they're a recognised reference, which I will give you in the appendix. They wanted to actually reduce waste all over their stores. And by waste, we're not talking about packaging, we're talking about food waste, and therefore an impact on their refrigerated supply chain. So they wanted to drive sustainable outcomes, but also deliver a better customer experience through helping the planet and reduce the amount of waste generated in their stores. So what we did is we helped them reduce landfill by up to 83% by simply helping them manage the cycle of food that they held on their store shop floor, also managing the incentives and promotions to drive customers towards the ones that are not packaged, i.e. you'll notice that they don't have any wrapped produce. They also were able to manage their refrigerated supply chain in a sustainable way. So it might not be obvious to you, but driving packaging waste is really critical in a supermarket. If you think about stock levels and shelf levels every day, they're using data through the POS data as well as insights to help make more sustainable, to drive ideas and sustainable decisions towards their consumers in their store, so that they're also actively working towards the concept of reducing food waste together, right? But that also helps them to do their demand forecasting of stock that's in transit, on shelves, perishable versus non-perishable. In effect, it's basically optimizing their supply chain. And the customer-facing app is incredibly interactive, but overall, they get rewarded and gamified for how much they reduce their basket waste. And that's incredibly forward-thinking of them. And one of my favorite ones, and this is something that was actually done not in this region, Southeast Asia, but we actually worked with a certain company that applied this to their chicken farms and pig farms, where they wanted to use sound, AI and sound sensors to detect the health of their stock, as well as the sounds that both pigs and chickens make when they're not well, when they're sick themselves, so that they can isolate, sanitize, and keep things going. So in effect, what we're talking about is using real data to drive incredible insights into their operation and actually make business decisions on how much stock they had to feed, stock they had to use, how much water they had to use, and also using the batching of certain stock to understand how much they were going to forward make in the predictive market. So data is incredibly powerful in this area. And how I can best communicate it to you, one of my favorite instructors of data, if anyone knows Peter Drucker, the best way to predict the future is to create it, and create it we can for a more sustainable future through data. So just think about that. You have more opportunities than not. that's basically the end of my presentation, and I know I'm just on time. So I just wanted to make sure that I communicated that effectively. If there's any questions, by all means, fire away.
Hi, Lauren. Thank you
Hey.
so much for the amazing presentation. I really love your stories. And as of now, I don't see any questions coming in just yet.
Yep.
But personally, I'm just curious. You talk a lot about transformative tech in different industries, and I was just wondering, speaking of more recent transformative tech, what role do you think that blockchain or Web3 play in achieving the UN SDGs? And are there any low-hanging fruits that can be achieved?
Honestly, every application in every industry is relevant. Literally today, I was talking about 2 hours ago with our blockchain team, where we've managed to actually work on we are working on sustainability ideas and concepts. We're working in a metal recycling and plastics recycling POC that's currently being rolled out. We're also working with a construction company that builds train infrastructure across Europe, and what they're using is blockchain for the verification of contracts, the verification of ethically sourced workers. So we can go into the HR system to ensure that there's efficacy in how much they're being paid and directly being paid. And when a contract's being delivered, consignment, and that's being shared across the suppliers of each element in a shared platform. So don't think of the limitations. Blockchain and non-fungible tokens, we were literally talking about that today and how we could apply that in an ERP system. It's actually doable, but the key here, and it goes to what Stephen was saying, is be transparent, communicate early, understand your stakeholders, bring them to the table because they will share their problems. And it's not as simple as, I've got an app and the app does that. Okay, so what does the supply chain do? And who are your partners to get this to market? So that's exactly what the Innovation Office does. We try to bring all of these stakeholders and shareholders together in a collaborative manner, whether it be on Mural tools like Mural or in-house workshops. But we do have a pro forma that we work to, and I'm more than happy to attach that onto the appendix and share that with the team.
Thank you so much for that. I really love that there is a connection between all of our themes today. And I think all the participants will really value that as well. Thank you so much for your time, Lorraine.
No problem. Thank you.
So next up, I'll be inviting Tisione Palma, Team Leader at Learning Solutions of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, UNITAR. He'll be speaking about design thinking and prototyping. Tisione, please.
Hello, thank you for having me. I just want to check that you can see my screen. So let me know if you cannot. Today, I'll be talking about, as was mentioned, design thinking and specifically prototyping. So basically at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research, we do use this as a methodology for designing our solutions in my team, the learning solutions. And also it's on one hand a design methodology and also an innovation methodology. So it's really relevant to the participants here today. And I'm going to give a very brief overview. It's a very elaborate methodology. There's many different versions, many resources out there, but I think it's in its core, it's very simple, it's very accessible, and really can be used by anyone, which is why I personally love it. So first of all, what is design thinking? Just to give you a brief overview of what is it, and then I will go into why we use it. So basically, in its most simple form, it's a problem-solving approach, and it's a design process. So it's a way to think about problems, to break them down, and eventually leads us towards creating solutions towards them. It helps us observe and develop empathy with our target users. I really want you to remember this because it's really a lot about the users. It's what we call a human-centered design approach. There's other approaches which are not so human-centered. They do not include this aspect of empathy. And I will explain a little bit more what I mean by empathy because I know it can have kind of different definitions, let's say. So it's an iterative and non-linear process. So I'm going to, in the next slides, explain what the process is, but I want you to think of it also that it doesn't have to exactly follow this order. It's non-linear in that sense. And by iterative, what I mean is that you are creating and you're testing, and then you're getting feedback. So you can also keep doing the process over and over again. It puts the target users at the center of the design process, and it invites them to co-create solutions. That's another really important point. So sometimes we think, okay, we need to be the ones creating solutions for others. And what is great about design thinking is that it can empower people to find solutions themselves. And that's often how we're actually using it in UNITAR, for example. So a great thing about it is it involves experimentation. It involves prototypes and it involves testing. So I will again go into this later. But one thing to remember is that failure is allowed in design thinking. It's okay to not have the perfect solution. The way that you get to solutions that work is through prototyping and testing ideas. You don't try to create the perfect idea before even trying to use it. You just design and you test and you get feedback and you iterate your process, basically. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about why design thinking, what makes it so special, basically. There's many ways to innovate. There's many techniques to come up with ideas or brainstorming solutions. But why would we use design thinking? So one thing I love about it is that it helps with out-of-the-box thinking. In fact, it encourages it. You're allowed to think of crazy ideas, to just be wild with your ideas. It's really important to allow that to happen naturally. And again, it comes back to this thing of not trying to filter your ideas or to think what is practical, what's going to work, what's not going to work. Because the idea of this methodology is that you don't know until you try. So you think of ideas, you make a prototype, and then you start implementing them. It helps to unleash creativity. So I don't know about you, but I myself and many people I know in school, when I was going in school, I often thought, okay, maybe I'm just not creative. Maybe I wasn't good at art, maybe I wasn't good at music. So, okay, I'm just not one of these creative people. And then you can easily go into adult life just ignoring or avoiding anything creative. You don't want to try to draw, you don't want to play music. But what is great about this technique is that it just lets you brainstorm crazy ideas and gets back that way of creativity, basically. And it's really useful to use when we're trying to think of solutions towards complex issues like the Sustainable Development Goals. We don't want to allow our thinking that we're not creative to get in the way, basically. It really asks important questions and it challenges assumptions. So when we're trying to understand our problems, we really want to get to the bottom of our problems. We want to challenge our own assumptions about the issues. Sometimes we might think one thing is a problem, but we're actually focusing on the wrong problem, or we don't know our problem well enough. What I think my favorite thing about it is that it's really simple and it's really applicable. Anyone can use it, and it can be applied to many different industries. It can be profit or non-profit, or education or medicine, and many different fields. So now I'm going to get into a little bit the 5 phases of the design thinking process. So these are the really core elements. And like I said, this is just an overview of the process. In each of these 5 phases, there's many techniques and many methods. But in essence, design thinking process comes down to these 5 phases. So number 1 is to empathize. And when I use this word empathy, another way to think about it is to understand. And specifically, it's to understand the people, the users that will be using your solutions. Sometimes we can think of solutions without thinking of the people who will actually be using those. So it's, for example, if I thought, okay, I have a great idea, a nice design of a new car, and then I just create this new car with my car company, but I never consulted people who would drive the car or people who would use it. And therefore, my solution or innovation could be really disconnected from the actual users, and therefore I don't really understand the problems that the users are facing. So empathizing is really about understanding problems, understanding needs, understanding who are the people that we're trying to solve problems for, what are they struggling with, what do they feel, what are their unmet needs, what do they want. So after this phase, once you've kind of understood the problem as much as you can, you want to start defining a problem statement. So this is really about taking your understanding and just getting it down to a specific statement. So it could sound something like, how might we make recycling stations more accessible? How might we do this? How might we do that? Which is responding, and it's built upon this empathy phase. So the next phase is the fun phase. It's about ideating. So this is really where you can get creative. And so you following the empathy, following the definition of your problem statement, you just start to brainstorm without holding back any ideas. They can be out of the box ideas. And what is really important when you're brainstorming, a tip that someone once gave me, is that, especially in groups, it's very easy to think of ideas and then to criticize those ideas. So someone might come up with an idea and I might say, oh, but that's not going to work, or that's going to be too expensive, and so on. So what's really important is that you don't hold back. Even if it might be impractical or not realistic, you just take all the ideas that you can. You don't hold back. So here you start to have a lot of potential possibilities. And so now what do you do with all these potential possibilities? That leads us to the next phase. Prototype. So prototype means making a really simple first edition, low-cost edition of one of your ideas. And it means making, it can also be a symbolic prototype. It doesn't have to be a real thing. It can be a sketch. It can be a very basic manufactured model. And this is where you start to take these ideas, which are sometimes hard to grasp, into something really concrete and ideally physical or visual. And what this allows you to do is to start to see how it would work in real life. And therefore, you are basically leading to the next phase, which is about testing. So once you create your prototypes, you just test. You go out there with potential users, so back to the empathy phase, and you get feedback. So you don't need the perfect solution. You don't need ideas to be fully formed yet, because you need to get feedback. You're getting data, and you record that data. You listen extremely carefully, and you start to notice what works and what doesn't work. And when I said earlier that it's a non-linear process, once you've tested your prototype, you can then get feedback, and then you can go back to any of the previous phases. You might want to go back to your prototype to just edit your prototype a little bit and then test again. Or you might want to go back to the empathy phase or to the definition phase. You might want to change your problem statement, or you might want to go back to the ideation phase and come up with new ideas. So these are the 5 core stages of design thinking, which is really the foundation of the whole philosophy, I would say. So why do we prototype? It's an important thing to consider, because this is what you'll be doing. It allows you to test your idea without investing too much effort. So this is quite important, really. Sometimes we can try to launch our ideas. We invest a lot of effort, time, and money, and then we realize they don't work, and it's too late because we never did this testing. It reduces your risks of failure. That's the great advantage of prototyping, because sometimes an idea might sound great, but in reality, you don't know. It allows you to continue reflecting on and refining your idea. So there's some important tips here. Be simple and ready to start all over again. Failure is welcome. It's okay to not have things perfect. Don't get too attached to your idea. Okay, it's okay to just rip it up, start again, and opt for quantity and quality. One thing I want to give an example, actually, which should hopefully give an understanding of how this differs from other approaches. So I want you to imagine you're with a group of friends and you think, okay, I want to create a new restaurant. Shall we do it? Shall we create a new restaurant down the street? And the idea for the restaurant is it's going to be the world's first fusion. It's going to be something like Italian food meets Indian food meets Mexican food. There's no other restaurants like it. It's super innovative. You and your friends get very, very excited by this idea. And so what you start to do is each of your friends, you invest a lot of money, you invest a lot of time, you decorate the restaurant, you buy the land, you hire the amazing chef, and it takes you 1 year to put this together. And then you have this launch date. And then you launch your restaurant, finally, the big grand opening. And what do you find? Is that no one is really interested in your restaurant. So no one really likes that food, and you didn't ever test. You never prototyped, you never tested, you never got feedback. And what's important to think about this is that this is not considering the user. This is an approach that missed the empathy phase. It missed all the phases, basically, of design thinking. It just went with the solution and it just tried to do it. And what another approach would be to, with the same group of friends, okay, I have this idea for this fusion type of cuisine. Let's just cook some of these samples of this cuisine, which would be your prototype. So you might make some burgers, some salads, and you just go into the street and you give your prototypes out for free and you start getting feedback. And you might notice that some people say, I really like this flavor, but this flavor I'm not such a fan of. Or they might say, hey, this is great food, but the place that we're at, I never walk through here. So you've just found the wrong location. And then maybe you might find a different location for your restaurant. So this is the kind of a different way of thinking, is that you need to feel what people need, what they actually want, and you want to just prototype and test and refine your ideas. So I want to say, like, we use we have actually used this methodology in our work in UNITAR. And one specific project I want to talk about, it's a big project, training and capacity building project we had in Colombia. And it really started like this. So this is one I was personally involved with. You can see me in the picture there. And we had this project related to SDG number 16, the one related to peace. And we were partnering with a local network in Colombia. And the idea is we didn't just create an idea for this training and capacity building solution. We wanted to include the users. We wanted to understand the people in Colombia and how also to empower them to also find the solutions themselves. So this is exactly used the design thinking process. And then the project has expanded and been multiplied to thousands of beneficiaries across the country. And like I said, it's empowered local communities to find their own solutions to their own issues that they're facing. So it's really a very transformational approach to use this kind of methodology towards the Sustainable Development Goals. And like I said, it can be used in any kind of complex problem or any problem whatsoever. And I understand you'll be using it towards thinking of solutions towards the SDGs. Some of them are listed here, but there may be others as well. So this can be used in many fields, like I mentioned earlier. I will be giving you this presentation later, so I'm not going to go too much into this now, but I've included lots of resources and examples of how this has been used in the real world by different companies, different organizations. And here there'll be some links to further resources. And like I said, what's great about design thinking is there's a lot of free resources out there. It's kind of open source. You'll find some great methodologies, methods, and tools and tips related to it. My colleague who will be following this presentation will also go more specifically into some of these steps. So for now, this is just a brief overview, and I'm happy to firstly remind you of those 5 phases. So empathy, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'll pass it back to the media team.
Hi, Tizione. Thank you so much for that really thought-provoking sharing. I think a lot of our participants will really benefit from this design thinking framework and apply it to their 24-hour hack challenge this weekend. So we'll now take questions from the floor. Let me just look at the list. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to input in the comments below, and we will ask it. We'll ask Tisione right here. Okay, right now there's still no questions coming in. Perhaps we'll thank Tisione for your time. And if any questions, maybe we will take it offline. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. So I believe with design thinking and prototyping skills, we can now couple those skill sets with the framework of the UN SDGs in mind. So this will be useful to participants who are still thinking about which SDG they wish to work on. The next segment involves the building of an SDG Canvas, which will allow participants to understand the key elements that are involved in building their SDG solution step by step. Let us welcome Aphrodite Anastasaki, Consultant in Partnerships and Innovation in SDG Education of UNITAR. Aphrodite, please.
Thank you very much, Fangxin, for the nice introduction. And it's a pleasure for me to be here for another year and partnering with the Global Green Economic Forum for the second SDG Open Hack in Singapore coming up this weekend. I take the baton from Tisione, who's a colleague of mine at UNITAR, to dive into a bit more on how to prepare the test that Tisione was mentioning about just before. So I'm calling out to all the hackathon participants that may be watching us, but also all the innovators and the community to present today about a new framework to position innovation for sustainable development, the ways this can be done, and what are the key important elements for approaching and building an SDG innovation or a new idea for addressing an SDG challenge or multiple challenges. I believe my presentation is up. Yes, perfect. So that was my introduction slide. So this methodology is the SDG Innovation Canvas and is not far from a canvas used by companies, the business canvas, as you may have heard, which is featured in the Business Harvard Review, and it has gone all around the world to really help companies move beyond strategies merely centered around products, but towards more business model thinking and a lean startup approach. So using this canvas as a basis, we have adapted it and we progressively enrich it with important elements needed to clear out when we design an SDG innovation. So everybody should be thinking about this methodology more as of a series of hypotheses you need to check along the process of innovation. And it includes 12 important elements to think through and develop. So let me walk you through step by step. So the first one is the SDG innovation outline or sketch. And in business terms, here we would talk about a minimum viable product, an MVP. But the product itself, in our case, it's not an MVP because the product when designing SDG innovation is not enough. It needs to be explained, and someone needs to feel what is the experience of addressing a challenge with a solution. So the first step is to build an environment, putting people in the context of what the experience of your solution might be. This is the outline or sketch of innovation. What is, and it mostly replies to the question, what is the main problem? What is the central pain point my innovation solves? So for this, you might want to get the big picture of the context and the current situation around the challenge you're addressing, the real statistics of it. And this, putting it in practice, it can look like a mind map, a sketch, or even a storytelling of how your innovation impacts one person, but also the many, how it solves more largely the challenge you identify. So remember that your innovation, it should speak to the needs of a community at large, but when telling a story, when pitching, you can always start with how it affects one person and then include in your pitch the strategies for scaling up and impacting more people and communities. So next is the team. And what is the most important thing when you have a good idea is to really gather a team. Because it's a fact that we can really not overcome the big challenges of the Sustainable Development Goals alone. We need a team with members who are motivated, they are thoughtful and can contribute, and they can help in practical ways with their own skills or motivation for the project. So when you gather a team, you should be able to identify where all members can help and what is needed or missing as a competency, as a skill from the team. So to scout the people that can best contribute to the idea and to the envisioned solution. So next is the key innovation. And key innovation is really what makes your innovation special. It can be social or technical components. There is always one innovation that is unique compared to others around. And this can really come with framing your solution around a specific challenge, a specific problem. It can make your innovation more concrete, more localized when we talk about sustainable development goals. And for this element, you can ask yourself, is the innovation available in this country, or what is it in the technology you use that it makes it unique? So this process for really defining the key innovation, it can come by researching other innovation, by exploring the landscape. This can lead you to use already existing innovations for different purpose, to address a different SDG challenge or scale already existing solutions or tools for standardization, for replication, and so on. So the innovation can come in many different ways. It cannot be just a new idea that responds to an unsolved challenge, but it can be a new idea that cover the increasing needs of a goal, of a global goal, and this is already innovation. So you can assure yourself that you already innovate in this sense. Fourth is the SDGs goals and targets. And your innovation, when we talk about the hackathon and all the solutions that you will be contributing to 4 of those in the hackathon, they will be built to tackle this challenge. And this challenge belongs to a framework, the Sustainable Development Goals. And it's a framework that can only be useful it can be useful for many directions of your project. Essentially, it can help you make the value proposition of your innovation even more concrete by identifying which key SDGs your innovation is associated with and what are the main targets you're addressing. So remember that the SDGs, they have in total 169 targets with different approaches and actions for implementing the goal. So choosing the most relevant to you, you can give a more comprehensive approach to what you're contributing to a big scale with your innovation. So you can choose from it and you can associate with the goals and the targets to help you frame your innovation at early stages. So next is the value proposition. And with value proposition, you show the ways your innovation will bring benefit to different aspects. This can be quantitative or qualitative aspects. It can be quantitative efficiency, like productivity, or it can be combined with qualitative experience, like overall community experience, the outcome, the well-being, essentially, the value proposition for your project, it replies to the question of how, in which way your innovation brings value and differs from others. And it can connect with the outline of your innovation, the sketch, as we were talking about at the beginning, the first element, in terms of the offered experience. And it also allows you to reflect beforehand on what are the services, what are the products your innovation involves, what are the advantages, the gain creators, and the needs your solution it suits in the society or different communities. And here the SDGs framework plays a very important role, as highlighted just before in the previous elements. So all of these are interconnected and can be used. Next is the scope of the SDG innovation. So defining what is unique about your innovation with the support of the SDGs framework. And you can then frame the bigger scope of it. Because often there are good spillovers, good innovation in one field, it can be positive or it can be negative in another field. So by defining the scope of your SDG innovation, you can measure the success of your solution in creating impact across multiple goals. And how you can do that? You can use, again, the framework of the global goals and cross-match different targets to define their level of positive interactions. This is an example. Here you see a table is a cross-matrix impact matrix of target interactions between the SDGs. It's a matrix often used in decision-making to prioritize the SDG targets and to identify the most effective partnerships and collaborations to achieve them. So green, you see there, it indicates positive interactions, red, negative interactions. And this exercise, it can also be used for your own specific project, solution, your development to show the relevance and contribution of your innovation to the goals. Key SDG success metrics. So this element is really about quantitative and qualitative metrics where you define which metric and in what levels your innovation will positively influence the challenge you're addressing. So depending on the challenge you tackle, there can be different factors and indicators to consider. So it could be indicators like inequality reduction, life expectancy, number of people positive impacted overall. So setting this target as a KPI, as if you wish, as an SDG metric early enough in your innovation, it can really help you reach the goal that you want. Next is key support resources, and this is very important. It's crucial to maintain support and develop your ideas. So here you define your needs and you essentially do some provisioning and source expertise. Here you need to really collectively, with your team, with your group, respond to 4 key questions to cross-check. What key resources are needed for the innovation to address the challenge and succeed? On which partners you can rely on? And here you can be very ambitious because network and partnerships for your solution is very important. But don't think about it as a source of financing your innovation, but think who from your network, from your community can leverage their expertise to support you. Another question is, are there any existing communities out there that you can mobilize? Or is there any opportunity to build and grow your own community? And this is mostly, we see it in projects where there are indeed very new ideas and innovations. So we don't see already existing communities. but you can see there is an opportunity to create your own. So next is innovation, sustainability, and scaling strategies. And apologies because it doesn't display the way we want on the screen, but it reads innovation, sustainability, and scaling strategies. So when positioning and doing innovation for sustainability, we cannot have a complete project if we don't take into account sustainability in our innovation and our strategies for scaling to a wider area, a larger community, to provision our project with potential to scale by maybe standardizing or establishing an innovation. So of course, these are not two separate things. Innovation, sustainability, and scaling strategies, they're much interlinked, because when placing your strategy to scale, reaching your goal is not possible if you haven't put really into perspective ideas, concepts, practices, or products that contribute to responsible innovation and that contribute also to social cohesion, to economic viability. And the other way around, when taking into consideration sustainability factors, they are at the same time indicators of your scaling potential. So these guided questions can help you set the stage to innovation, sustainability, and scaling. So how do you plan to deliver your innovation in a sustainable way? How do you plan to integrate inclusivity? How do you plan to scale your innovation by transferring impact from primary communities to secondary communities or consumers who are affected? If you plan to deliver your innovation in a commercial way, think about analyzing the current market competition and your advantages. And what could be the technical, social mechanisms to make an impact at global scale? Is it community building? Is it building partnerships? Is it by standardizing a tech solution? So think about all these questions to help you combine and define innovation, sustainability, and scaling strategies. So building a revenue model. So this aligns with analyzing your market competition and defining your own advantages and factors for creating an effective model. That wouldn't mean directly targeting commerce and profit, especially when you're in early stage of innovating, but engaging in the process of finding the right fit for your innovation, your unique value proposition, the right investors, short or long-term milestones. So this means, but this is what we mean by revenue model. So as I said, revenue streams may not be a priority when starting and developing your innovation, but they might become one in the process. So it's a lesson we have learned in social innovation projects, especially with solutions addressed to the most vulnerable, who often cannot really afford the solution you're offering. Next is limitation and threats to SDG innovations. So every innovation has limitation and threats. You might want to show what you're able to do, but you might also want to show what you're not able to do. And this is very important because it shows in what you can be more focused to develop your idea, with excluding unintended consequences or lack of positively measurable impact and so on, by defining limitations and threats. So what does externally limit your innovation? Is it complexity for impact evaluation because the scope is very big, or maybe because it applies to just developed or just developing countries, big or small companies? What are the threats, the impact, risk, and consequences of an existing policy, a tool, or lack of this? So this is very important to show what you're not able to do as well. Last but not least is defining 3 concrete next steps. So in whatever stage of the innovation process you reach, even after the hackathon, define the next 3 steps and see them as action points for your team. So this could be identifying the way you move forward with assessing your data or contact potential partners. And this is something you can always do and revise along the process. So remember that the SDG Innovation Canvas is a plan that can accompany any sustainable development goal and that can complement the development of any idea, the framing of a challenge, or building an innovation and solution path. And it can accompany you in the process of innovation anytime. So this is really the framework, the methodology we build to standardize the process of innovation for SDG education. And I will be very happy to see many of you watching right now in the SDG Open Hack applying this framework. And I'm very happy to be discussing with you more about this if you want to apply it. So with this, I will conclude and I will give it over back to Fangqin. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aphrodite, for your sharing. I think that is really comprehensive and there's a lot to digest. So we have some questions from the floor today. Christina asked, do you have any tips on the time management during the 24 hours open hack? So because our hackathon is only 24 hours and given there's so much tips and so much framework to use, how do we manage our time in this time-limited competition?
Mm-hmm. So first, I would like to suggest, in case there is a space capacity for the teams to form already beforehand and a space can be enabled for them to interact, that it would be great for the teams to start exchanging already. And this is not just to follow already a methodology or how they can hack, but really to get to know each other. The second element I presented was the team, and team is very important. This is something they can do already in the hackathon, but if there is time beforehand, that's even better to increase interactions and to be more ready to get to know each other about what skills, competencies, their interest in the challenge they're going to be tackling together. So with regards to time management during the hackathon, I think it's very important to establish some deadlines and milestones on the development on the solution. So if there is imagine that you want to work from 9 to 24 hours, and in the middle of the day you can have, imagine that you want to do a cross pitch and present your idea to the other teams that also address a solution in the hackathon. So you might want, by this time of the cross pitch, to have some already elements checked, and this is so mainly about being aware of what is the problem, what is the main pain points. So this is the problem we're trying to solve, and we have this first ideas. So by the time of the cross pitch at the middle of the day, you want to have defined already what are the what is the pain point we want to solve, what are some ideas we already have, how we plan to, what is the innovation approach we want to take and develop during the hackathon. And then you can go and develop it, even go further from just scratching the surface of innovation and have a real prototype at the end of the hackathon. But I would say take these elements and see what it makes sense for you to have as collectively, because this is a collective process by the end of the hackathon, where you want to reach by the end of it.
Right, I totally agree with that. So I guess starting early and also tapping on each other's strengths during the hackathon and networking during these 24 hours, that will be very important for our participants. So Our next question, which is more important for a startup, sustainability or scalability? So I guess in the context of pursuing SDGs, how does a early stage startup balance that?
Right, that's a very good question. When starting, when having an idea, and when you're already in the process of building a startup, but even before that, when having a team, there will be a lot of ideas at the beginning, and especially for an idea coming out of the hackathon, because this is my personal experience with hackathon teams. The ambition is very big and the passion is very big for scaling, right? So we need here to define in what terms this is important. For a startup that wants to that makes social impact work, both are very important, and I believe that both should be developed at the same time. So really have a strategy of what can be inclusive for your idea. So in that case, integrating sustainability and how you can take this, how your sustainable product, the services, what you offer can be used for scaling up. And let's be reminded as well that sustainability is not only about just working on our own. It's about a community, is reaching out to partners that can help us do it. So I think both are important and both can be worked at the same time. So yes, I believe, especially from our experience with people working on social impact, this is what we see happening there, and my personal opinion, the importance there.
Thank you so much for that. I really agree. And I believe that in this day and age, we can do well and also do good at the same time. So once again, thank you so much, Aphrodite, for your time. And thank you, everybody, for your questions. And on behalf of GGEF, we are very happy to be able to collaborate with UNITAR on this hackathon. They have been of much help to us, and we are really grateful for the expertise in this journey. So with that, we have come to the end of day 1 of our Innovation Bootcamp. We hope that you have had an amazing experience, and we thank the mentors for their time and their valuable advice for the participants. We look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow at the second session of our bootcamp. We'll cover a wider range of topics, ranging from the ways to bring a concept to solution for the problems that SDGs aim to address, challenge shaping, pitching, and effective communications. The speakers who will be joining us tomorrow are Miranda Kaur from MSCI, Thomas Myla from Open Geneva, and Lisa Solodre from R3I Ventures. Besides, you'll also get to hear firsthand how the SDG Open Hack 2021 experience was like for the winning teams. Joining us will be Nidula Wigmau from Team Smart Panel and Xavier To from Team Pukaki. If you haven't already registered for the SDG Open Hack, be sure to apply today via ggef.com/SDG Open Hack. Or if you are still on the fence, allow me to share a video of the testimonials of last year's Open Hack.
Organizers of SGD Hack Singapore, I would like to say that my journey here was eventful and exciting.
It is a great place to meet and network with good people.
During the course of the hackathon itself, we met different stakeholders from different corporate partners.
To be able to hear the ideas from fellow undergrads from different universities and other fields of study.
From the innovation bootcamp that was provided to the one-to-one interactions with the mentors, my team and I are thankful for the opportunity to address ongoing global issues and truly enjoyed ourselves.
I can say for sure that we submitted a video that we are proud of.
We are happy that we gave our best
and capitalize on this opportunity.
So thank you to all the mentors for your wisdom and guidance.
I would definitely recommend this hackathon to anyone who is interested in climate change, problem solving, and even networking.
I think all in all it was a great experience and I would love to join it again.
Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the video. Tomorrow will be an exciting day as well. See you there and good night.